It's a Thursday evening, December 14th, 1933. And at age 87, our Unity co-founder, Charles Fillmore, is standing in front of the room, ready to begin the 12th lesson of his class on the 12 powers of man. He begins, I am filled with the abundant, intelligent, everywhere present life of spirit. It flows freely through me, cleansing, healing, harmonizing, vitalizing every part. I am one with this life, and in it, I am every whit whole. So it's already up there, okay? So, wow. Does that sound like any 87-year-old man you know? Or woman? I mean, it's right up there with my favorite, which is, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm as I spring forth with a mighty faith to do what ought to be done by me. Isn't that, this is just so powerful. So I want us all to say it like we mean it, with life. I want you to stand up and get the life flowing as we affirm this together. I am filled with the abundant, intelligence, everywhere present life of spirit. It flows through me, cleansing, healing, harmonizing, and vitalizing every part. I am one with this life, and in it I am every whit whole. Feel the energy of that. And now let's affirm it again. I am filled with the abundant, intelligent, everywhere present life of spirit. It flows freely through me, cleansing, healing, harmonizing, and vitalizing every part. I am one with this life, and in it I am every whit whole. Again, feel it. Feel the energy of this life coursing through you as we affirm it one last time. I am filled with the abundant, intelligent, everywhere present life of spirit. It flows freely through me, cleansing, healing, harmonizing, vitalizing every part. I am one with this life, and in it I am every whit whole. Okay, have a seat. Feel that energy. Feel that energy. Oh, love Charles Fillmore. So how many of you have heard the word wit before? Every whit whole, showing your age, okay? Yeah, very antiquated, but one of the things I love is that Unity doesn't change the terminology in any of its books. And so when you read Lessons of Truth, which is our foundational book, or any of the Charles Fillmore books, the words are there, and sometimes you have to look them up. I looked up wit, and it came up white. It didn't even have it in Google, you know, so I thought that was interesting. So maybe I should have gone to a dictionary first. So the human condition is that we use our life. And on a human level, nothing wrong with this, we have to do this, but on a human-only level, we use our life, the power of life, from our sense consciousness. You know, based on our thoughts, our beliefs, our attitudes, our feelings. And so we might use that life in the human condition to do something very worthy. Or we might use it to do something not worthy at all. Okay? We might use it on the human level to call forth healing in our body. And so again, nothing wrong with all of this, but that's just You know, unity is practical spirituality. So I want you to understand that these 12 powers are active in us. We are using them every day of our lives, throughout the day. And so when we, well, let me get to the spiritual solution first. So the spiritual solution is using not the power of life, not only from sense consciousness, but from an elevated consciousness, from our Christ, from our divine nature. And we do that through bringing in divine ideas, divine truths, divine principles, divine laws. And that truly is at the highest level. And we do it, when we use it at that level, what we are doing is we are doing that in order to be the best person and the best Christ that we can be. You know, our Christ self is perfect, but are we letting that perfection express? Are we letting it be all it can be in expression through us? So, one of the ways that we can use the power of life is in terms of prosperity. And prosperity is health, it is wealth, it is peace of mind, it is relationships, okay? So here's what Charles Fillmore said in that class that night. He said, the life consciousness rightly directed ensures prosperity. And again, on all those levels. He said, by realizing every day that the tree of life within is nurtured and cared for by constructive, upbuilding words. By constructive, upbuilding words. We are opening the way for divine substance to flow to us. You know, substance in Unity's terminology is that which underlies everything that is. It's that invisible stuff that we can't see, but that out of it comes everything that is. See, he said, then goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So that when we use this constructive, upbuilding words, we are opening, we're literally opening the way for divine substance to flow to us. Excuse me. How many of you have ever been present at the bedside of someone as they died? Okay, a lot of us have. Am I the only one that noticed that whenever I've been to funerals, you know, all my life, I've been to funerals where there were open coffins, and the body kind of looks like wax. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of there's a little pallor to it or whatever. Well, I always thought that was because of the embalming process. You know, that somehow they turned them into wax. And then the first person I was ever with as she died was my mother. And the last thing she did before she died was she opened her eyes and she looked up, and she had the most incredible expression of joy and awe that I had ever seen on her. She was not a very naturally happy person, but in that moment was the most joy I ever saw in her. And that's when she took her last breath. And as soon as she took that last breath, and you know, we take the last breath, we don't exhale. You know that when we die, we take our last breath. And in that last breath, not only did she have this look of awe and joy and wonder, but immediately her body looked like wax. The life was no longer there. The life was still there, but not in her body. And this is what I read in one of the books when I was doing my research for this. If you've ever been in the presence of a person in the dying process, at the moment of death, something invisible leaves the body. The physical body is still there. It looks like the same person. Somehow you just know the person is no longer present. The life or energy is gone. The life, but since energy cannot be destroyed, this life, this energy, somehow continues. I really do still have allergies. But the life I am is cleansing them, healing, harmonizing, until I'm every whit whole. Okay. So, how many of you have heard the term breathing life into something? Right? Yeah, we breathe life into a project or something we're doing. We give it energy, right? We give it life. And we can also breathe life into our thoughts, into our words, as Charles Fillmore obviously did in many of his writings, into our feelings, into ideas, into our beliefs. You know, they could just sit there kind of stagnant, or we can breathe life into it. In fact, Linda Martella Woodson, in her book, Divine Audacity, says that, reminds us that the opposite of life is not death. The opposite of life is stagnation. Okay? So, so we can enliven a project that we're working on, an activity. We can enliven anything that we're doing. We can breathe life into it. Or we can struggle. You know, we can procrastinate. That's one of my favorites, right? Procrastinate. And we can withhold life from an activity, a project. We can also do it for our own body, for our own selves. We can breathe life into it. I saw this wonderful video, I don't know how many of you have seen it, of this disabled war veteran who was, he walked with two crutches, or canes, I guess they were, that tend to go up your arm. And he was severely overweight. He weighed 297 pounds, I think. And how many of you have ever seen this thing on YouTube? And then he started doing yoga, working with the yoga instructor, and really was serious. And over, I don't know, 6 or 8 months period, he brought life back to his body. And he was able to lay down the crutches. And he was not only able to walk, he was able to run. And on the video, on the YouTube, it shows him doing a headstand. I mean, it was remarkable what happened once this man decided to breathe life into his body. And so no matter what shape we're in, no matter what condition is in, we can choose life, and we can choose to bring life. I remember once when I was doing the public television show on Quest, and I did it for 4 years, I think. And I did the radio show for about that long. The TV show I did a little over a year. We were filming this television episode, and I was interviewing someone that Larry Dossey had referred me to, and I can't remember his name right now, but he said that he was working with an older gentleman who was dying. And somehow in this counseling and his working with him, he just suggested that the man be grateful for the life that he has. No matter how, less it may seem than it used to be, but to give thanks, to be grateful, and to, really embrace whatever life he had left. And within months, the guy was out of his wheelchair. He was traveling the world. And I don't know how much longer he lived, but just by breathing life into his body, he was able to do this. Evie McDonald, who is now a Methodist minister. But years ago, if you want to Google her, E.V.Y. McDonald, she had deteriorated to the point where she described herself as a bowl of jello in a wheelchair. And she was able, and she realized that the one thing she wanted to experience before she left the planet and left her body was she wanted to experience love. And so she began loving herself. And she said she would be naked in front of the mirror every day and she would find something to love. Some part of her body to love. And guess what? She was totally healed. The doctors, of course, said it had been a misdiagnosis. But she was totally healed. Then there's Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founder, other co-founder of Unity. And a lot of you know that she went to a lecture one night. She had been given about 6 months to live. She had consumption, which back in the 1800s was what they called tuberculosis. And this lecturer, E.B. Weeks, said, "You are a child of God and you do not inherit sickness." And she had always thought she had inherited this condition. And it changed her life. Because she not only heard the words, she grokked them with every cell and atom of her body. And she began apologizing to her body for all the mean things she had ever said about it. And she began praising it and calling it strong and vital and whole. And over a 2-year period, she was totally healed. She breathed life back into her body. Evie McDonald breathed life back into her body. And this disabled war veteran breathed life into his body. And so we can do that. We can breathe life into our body and into any project we're working in, into our relationships, into our finances, whatever it is, we have this power of life that is ours. It's a divine inheritance. It came with the body. It doesn't leave with the body, but it came with the body. So how are you showing up? How are you showing up for life? What are you giving energy to? What are you withholding energy from? What are you doing that supports or robs you of the spirit of vitality? Are you in a job that you don't like? A career that you don't like? Are you running around and hanging out with people that really don't support you? What are you doing? And I'm just wondering, we have time for maybe one example. If anyone wants to share a realization that you had about that you weren't breathing life into something and that you were going to start, or just anything regarding the power of life. Yes, Mary Lynn. Would you speak up? Stand and speak up.
I homeschool my son. Comes up, tall one with a ponytail when they come out, and it's been the entire 9 years of schooling, and I'm sick of it. And we have decided to homeschool him next year for 9th grade, so I need to breathe life into that. I'm tired of it.
So Mary Lynn, I celebrate that the very life you are is moving in you, through you, as you, in every cell and atom of your body, your heart, your soul, your mind. And with that life, you are breathing it into this last year of homeschooling for Tecumseh.
Well, it could be 4 more years.
Or 4 more. Because you may breathe so much life in it that you want to do it for 4 years. And so I celebrate that that's your intention and that you have spoken it loud. I mean, when we speak it loud, that's saying yes to it. And so it's unfolding perfectly in divine, perfect order.
Well, I appreciate it, because it's been on my mind a lot.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, there's so much about this power that I don't have time to talk about. But how do we do it? How do we life into it? How do we put feet on this message and put feet on the power of life? And we know, of course, prayer and meditation. But here's what Charles Fillmore said in that same class. He said, life is divine, spiritual, and its source is God, Spirit. The river of life is within us in spiritual consciousness. Here's the key part. We come into consciousness of the river of life through the quickening of spirit. We can be truly quickened with new life and vitalized in mind and body only by consciously contacting Spirit. This contact is made through prayer, meditation, and good works. Okay? So that's how we do it. And then some of you have noticed that, there's colors associated with the 12 powers, and there are disciples. In fact, I just read last night that the order, I never understood the order of the 12 powers in the Unity books, but I follow it, but I never understood it. Well, the order is based on the same order that Jesus called the disciples. So that's why Peter is first, and then Andrew, or whatever. So I thought that was an interesting bit of trivia when we have Unity Trivial Pursuit someday. And then there's the colors. And the colors really were not, cast in stone. Charles Fillmore didn't have any great revelation. He did discern where the locations in the body were, So the life is in the generative organs, our reproductive organs. And so whenever we are in prayer and meditation, if we identify an area, a power that seems like it needs a little development, a little life breathed into it, because we can breathe life into any of our 12 powers, then we can use the color and the body location to, the way I do it is like I would just go to my generative organs and I would imagine the color red, because that's the color. And I would just imagine that I'm breathing in and out through that area of my body. And it calls it forth, it quickens it. And then, in your handout, there's all kinds of affirmations that you can make. And I'm going to have to do a class on 12 powers soon, because I made this wheel, this 12-power wheel. And it takes us from all 7 levels on each power. And from the center, where, from the Christ within, we call forth our disciples, and they work their way out. And so I give this to people and I say, rate yourself on which level you think you are. You're not going to turn it in, nobody's going to see it. And so people rate themselves, and generally we rate ourselves pretty high. And then I say, do you have a challenge in your life right now? People go, well, yes, it could be, yeah, right. So then I say, now rate yourself on where you are with each of your powers regarding that issue. And the number becomes big, And so it's a real practical way. So then you say, oh, I'm only at the 4th level. So I'm going to take what the 4th level is, transmutation. I praise the Spirit that gives me life, and I give thanks for divine activity within me. But I want to move up to the regeneration level. I am renewed, restored, and reborn through the activity of Christ in me. So then we can take that affirmation along with the color, along with the breathing, and we can really call it forth, claim it. We don't make affirmations in order to make them come true. We make affirmations in order to align our consciousness with the truth with a capital T. So that's some of the things you can do to call forth your power of life. And so I celebrate that as we leave the service today, we are each one more fully calling forth and developing our spiritual power of life. That ability to energize, to vitalize, enliven, animate, and invigorate whatever we are doing, whatever we are being. And so let's begin doing that right now in a sacred time of shared prayer based on Winifred Hoffman's 7 levels. And so I invite each one of us to just begin focusing on life with the breath. And from the top of our head to the base of our spine, we just allow and imagine that life moving up and down our core, the core of our being. And then with your vision, hold the picture of the radiant Christ light. Which is just a brilliant light. And allow it to turn to a bright red. And bring your focus to your generative area, your reproductive organs. And just imagine breathing in and out through this area of the body. Allowing the light of life to shine through every cell and atom of the body, and then to radiate out beyond the body. As we move up through these 7 levels, I invite you to silently affirm the first level, recognition. My life is God life, whole and free. On an intellectual level, I know this. Sensation. I am alive, alert, awake, joyous, and enthusiastic about life and living. Appropriation. I accept God's life as a pure stream, healing and harmonizing every part of my being. Transmutation. I praise the Spirit that gives me life, and I give thanks for divine activity within me. Regeneration. I am renewed, restored, and reborn through the activity of Christ in me. And resurrection. I am lifted up into eternal life by the Christ of my being. And so again, keeping the attention on the generative organs, the color red, silently hear these words. The Christ in me is quickening my faculty of life. I am calm, serene, and in complete mastery of my emotions, thus allowing the universal life force to flow through me, to heal, energize, and recharge my physical body. I am grateful in the silence. And as we gently bring our attention back to this time and place, silently say, thank you, divine life. I am the spiritual power of life. My ability to energize, vitalize, enliven, animate, and invigorate. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That it is so, and so it is, and so I am.